Good morning. Welcome, everybody. If we'd all stand for the invocation by Commissioner Benak and then the pledge.
Please join me in prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for bringing us together on another beautiful day in wonderful Manatee County. Please give us the wisdom to make good decisions as we debate today on what to do with our limited resources. Please give us all strength, Lord, and thank you so much for everything you do for us. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Administrator, any changes to the agenda, or do you want to read an item into the agenda, or Jan?
I think we'll just get started with the fact that this is part of the ongoing legislative process that counties must follow in order to adopt the budget. This particular session is where you're requested or required by state statute to adopt a tentative millage rate. In the statutes, it reads 35 days after July 1, the Board of County Commissioners will set that tentative millage rate for the purpose of sending out the trim notices to homeowners or taxpayers within the county. Today we've got a couple of issues that start things off. We projected this budget with a property tax revenue increase in the 9% range, or 9%. And based on what we heard from the tax collector on July 1, he has the property tax rate at 8.1% growth rate. We have adjusted the budget accordingly because there's been other revenues that have gone up. Some costs have come down, and so across all funds we've been able to adjust without impacting any particular organization's budget that you discussed in June. So we have a challenge of waiting, as we did last year, when you adopted the budget at this juncture, or you dealt with the budget, the property appraiser was saying 8.4%, and what happened when the final roll was certified, it came in at 9.2. We are hoping or expecting that will happen again this year. As they finalize the research that they do in the property appraiser's office. So the challenge is to deal with that shortfall and wait and see how it finally rolls out at the end of September. In addition, we have one other challenge that faces us. Last Thursday, the clerk's office, the clerk and Jan received a phone call from the Department of Revenue indicating that there was a potential revenue problem that we're going to face, in that some sales tax revenue that has come our way for several years is actually revenue that belongs to Sarasota County. We have no details at this point in time. All we have is a phone call and an email that confirm the phone call. No detail. It could be in the $4 million range, but we're not sure because all we have is a phone call. But if we have a problem that revenue came our way and the state's going to come visit us with a potential of paying that back, we have an additional challenge to the budget that you've adopted. There's nothing we can do today that would mitigate against that because we don't have any details. And they fully admit that it was their mistake. It wasn't anything that we did. It was nothing that the clerk did. It was nothing the tax collector or the property appraiser did. It was an error on the state's point in allocating revenue that should have gone to Sarasota County, and it came to Manatee County. When we get more details, I will communicate with you, and we will begin trying to figure out how much and what are we going to do about it. Now, that was kind of a downer to start the morning off.
Thank you.
Jan has a presentation of some slides that will help you and the taxpayers at home understand more about this budget. We have been through hours and hours of workshops with you since we delivered the budget at the end of May. We have opportunities for you to amend the budget as you may choose to. The final adoption will take place at the 2 public hearings that have been scheduled in September that are on your calendars and already been published. So unless there are questions, I'll turn it over to Jan for a slideshow.
All right, go ahead, Jan.
Question?
Oh, well, you're not on the board. Now you are.
Well,
Commissioner
you looked
Whitmore.
at it. The $4 million that the state made a mistake on, not to our benefit, and I'm sure this probably has happened before. I had a business on University Parkway, and they used to mess up all the time, but how does that go? Are they going to make us pay it back all at once, or, I mean?
We don't have that information yet. We don't know if we even need to pay it back. That would be my position. They made a mistake. Why should we cover their mistake?
Right.
And when you think, we have no idea if it's 4 million. In the phone call, they mentioned that. 4 million, 6 million, I have no idea. We have no idea. $4 million is a lot of money to this county and the programs that you fund. $4 million on an $80+ billion budget on the state level is, I would suggest, more of a rounding error. They made a mistake, let them figure out how to cover for it, but would be my first suggestion. But we'll wait and see what they come up with and what detail they provided us and for how long this has been going on. All of those questions that you might have, we have no answers to yet.
And you kind of know what businesses it was, correct? I think you should.
But it's on the
We're told.
university corridor, so it's some parcels on that.
I was going to say you should. I mean, we were told the mall, and that's where they messed
We
up.
haven't received any of the details.
Not in writing, but verbally. Okay. Thank you.
All right, Jan?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'd like to walk you through a PowerPoint. This confirms what you've already received in a memo, but we just wanted to take time to also walk through it for the public. So on the July 1st certification, the percentage increase that came in from the prior year for countywide, as Mr. Hunziker said, is 8.1. In our budget, we did project a 9% increase, so there was a difference. Unincorporated came in at 8.2, and you do have the Palm Air MSTU, which came in at 7.3. So in adjusting the budget, we wanted to give you an example of your increases over the last several years. And if you notice from FY 16, 17, and 18, there was a significant increase, specifically 17 at 8.8% increase, and, 17, and in 19, a 9.2% increase. In adjusting the budget, in the next slide, we did have to adjust the budget down to the certification values that were provided us by the property appraiser. In doing that, we wanted to walk through what specifically changed. In the first column is the total budget. I'd like to go through it first, and then we'll go specifically to the general fund. The net ad valorem decreases across all funds roughly resulted in a $2 million decrease. Now, since the time of your last work session and the July 1st, we did receive gas tax estimates. Those finally did come in, and we increased the budget to represent those. Those are $359,000 increase. Now, with the ad valorem decrease, it also decreased the TIF payments that you had to make. They went down as well. So that provided a $443,000 decrease. The last one, when we were going through, we always go back through and look at funds again to make sure that we're on path with what we projected, because again, we're projecting. The children's services, we had estimated lower and then just put that amount in the reserve for the next year. So we went ahead, based upon what we're seeing, we did the estimate. We lowered the beginning balance by $2.6 million. Did not affect the payments in next year because we had already stuck that in reserve. We're just trying to be as close as we can to actuals. The changes within the expenses, of course, because you're collecting lower ad valorem, your tax collector changes were saved by $100,000. CRF, again, CRA changes and TIFs, you did have to pay some of the CRAs a little bit more. The gas tax payments to municipalities, that had a shift in it. And then while we were scouring through, we have always paid the Bradenton downtown development back an amount for the parking garage downtown. You've amended that, so that brought us $660,000 savings. And then you had a little bit of shift in your 20% because we have to go back and recalculate all the 20% reserves. So overall, the effect to your reserves was a $3.5 million decrease, with the largest portion of that, again, being children's services, which that does not affect the spending for next year. In the general fund specifically, after you net everything out, the impact to the general fund was a $386,000 decrease, which we offset into your reserves. But it was much less of an impact than if it was just only the ad valorem taxes.
Okay.
Going to the next.
Commissioner Whitmore?
Can you go back to, refresh me on the Bradenton development?
In the funding that you received, we had made an agreement, you had made an agreement maybe 10 years ago that,
Oh, that was the agreement when we built this building.
yes.
Right.
Between the county and the city and the Downtown Development Authority. It's a long-winded explanation, but if we constructed this, the amount we paid them, they would give us back the amount of the debt service. And that whole transaction expired or was unwound a year and a half ago, I believe
Right.
it was. And so our commitments to paying them have gone down.
And the garage, but you mentioned the garage, that's why.
Well, the garage is part of the deal also.
Okay.
In that transaction, back so many years ago when this building was built, the parking garage we requested, or the then Board of County Commissioners requested the city operate the parking garage.
Right.
That is unwound. We're still have an interim agreement with the city to manage the parking garage until we come up with the new collection methodology that Charlie Bishop's working on. We should be implementing within the next year.
That's what I wanted to know, thanks.
Jan?
Moving along, the next slide, we wanted to refresh your memory that as you went through all the work sessions you went through, you did flag several items. The total amount that was flagged was $3.7 million, resulting in 22 FTE. Of that amount, we broke it down so that you could clearly see the recurring and the non-recurring, which is very important to us. The recurring is the funding that we actually have money to pay with current year revenues. Non-recurring is dipping into savings. The recurring resulted in $1,854,000 and the non-recurring $1,891,000. On the next slide, we've broken it into the funds so you could clearly see where they're at. And if I may, I'll run through them briefly so that you can see them in each section. Within the general fund, there were a total of 70 FTEs that you flagged.
Those are positions.
Yes. I'm sorry. My terminology when I came into government, I swore I wouldn't do that. But yes, 17 positions. One of the things to note specifically, you'll notice that we also put the law enforcement impact fees right below that. The sheriff's budget was flagged for 11 positions, and of those positions, they need equipment. That equipment can qualify for law enforcement impact fees. So that is a non-recurring one-time expense of $322,000 that the impact fees would pay for. But the recurring piece that would be affecting the general fund is $1.2 million. Going to the next page, these are broken down into the library fund, the park, and the transportation. As you'll see in the library fund, there are 2 positions that were flagged for $121,942. In the park fund, there are 3 positions for $110,000 and a one-time $30,000 cost. Within the transportation fund, there are only 2 non-recurring items that were flagged: shell placement of $1 million and the county gateway of $50,000. Flipping to the last page, in the court technology fund, there is you flagged a request for an IT director for $48,288. You'll notice it doesn't have a position beside it. That's because it is a reimbursement. That position's accounted for in, I believe, the Sarasota budget. The Southwest TIF, there was an $11,000 flagged item recurring within it. So the total that you have are non-recurring of 1,891,000, recurring 1,800,054,000. Flipping to the next one now, in
One, Commissioner
It's a
DeSabatino?
small item, the 11,000, why can't that come out of the TIF money?
it can. It's just it would be a recurring item that we had just not funded. So that item clearly can if you want, and it's so minuscule of an amount, we should be able to.
Right, because you've got so much money sitting there doing nothing. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson.
Going back to that slide before with the shell roads, you have it in at $1 million. I thought we had it in the budget originally at like 600,000 or
That was the
400.
extra I had asked for and
He asked
flagged
for an
it.
Right,
extra
so
million.
the marginal increase is really 400, not
No,
a million.
it's a whole
because you already
million
had
above.
600.
No, it's above.
Another
It'd be 1,600,000.
Another
Had it.
million.
She came up with $1 million.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
As a
Wow.
person that's lived on a dirt road a lot of times, let me tell you, it costs a lot to keep that shell on that road. So,
Madam,
Commissioner Whitmore.
since people are going back to flagged items, do you want me to say, can I make a comment now, or you
Why
want
don't
me
we
to wait?
finish the slide presentation?
Right, then,
So the budget before you, if we go forward, the budget before you is balanced. We took the reduction that we received in property taxes, offset it against reserves, acknowledged any of the new income that we knew at that time. In doing that, your budget is balanced and your millage rate has not increased. Currently, the adopted budget is at 6.4326, and the proposed budget before you that you're voting on for 19 has not changed, is at 6.4326. The unincorporated remain the same, as well as the Palm Air MSTU. So with that, the budget before you is balanced, other than the flagged items that you wanted to discuss here.
Commissioner
And that's
Whitmore.
what I have.
okay, and there was two that I highlighted, and one was we had a passionate discussion about the Guardian. I'm sure probably Vanessa will bring that up. I'm bringing up the ECC dispatchers. Those dispatchers belong in the Emergency Operations Center for A and B shift. I had a friend Friday night that collapsed and died about 9:54 Friday night, and our dispatchers were wonderful. The reason why I think, and this is all part of public safety, they do need the dispatchers, but if this happens, then the position that's been filled by a law enforcement officer that works in animal services, one of their officers, can go on the road, which they haven't since I started. They've always been having to do dispatch, so that person can actually be a dispatcher. And we have over 700 square miles, and we only have a few officers. So they've only added 3 positions since the recession that anybody can document. So again, I'm respectfully asking that 2 positions be added to to the dispatch for the dispatch system, and then that will free up the position of a patrol officer at Animal Services to be put on the road, which he hasn't been able to since 2010.
So that's
nobody-
98,222.
Yeah, and that's recurring. It's for 2 positions. I called Bob this morning. It's an A shift and a B shift, day shift, because that's when we get the most calls for animal issues. And then that officer can be freed up. So I have no flag or no support.
If it had to do with human beings, perhaps.
Please
at this
do.
point-
Well, thank you.
Well, I
Thanks
didn't
a
mean
lot.
any disrespect,
Thanks a lot.
but
Well,
at
it
this
was.
point.
Oh,
It
let's
was very
stay on,
disrespectful.
let's just
Very
stay on the let's stay
disrespectful.
on the budget, please.
I was
I
trying
know you,
to.
just stay on the budget. Commissioner Ball.
Well, I just said what I was going to say. I mean, we're, 2 things. Let's just deal with it. Number one, none of the flagged items, mean anything at this point. You're sticking with the budget that the county administrator has brought forward until we see if there's any extra money so that we can do what we want to do.
True.
So at this point, it's really irrelevant. As far as, I understand the dispatchers and so forth for animal services, But I also know that we have some important items and flagged items that, help to protect and have safety for people. And so, you ask yourself, what do you do here? Which comes first? And that's a tough subject, because we all have dogs up here. Well, except for Robin. And Ed, you don't have one.
I don't have a dog.
You don't have a dog?
I have a pig.
Oh, pig's good.
Yes, he is.
Pig's good. So it is a difficult situation, but I think at this point, I don't foresee any of the commissioners doing anything other than waiting until Charlie Hackney makes his determinations on the final figures, at which time I'm sure that probably, dispatchers for animal services might be available. It wouldn't surprise me. But right now, the only thing you can really do is say, well, either you're going to wait, like the county administrator has asked you, or we're going to question why it is that some items in the budget that are very important to us don't seem to get any leadway in the budget that we have today. That's a decision for this board to make. But until then, I don't see or hear that happening, so I think we have to wait.
I agree.
Takes 4 votes.
Commissioner
That's all.
Benak.
Yeah, and that is where we're at. Vanessa did a good job summing it up, kind of where we're at. I do think it's important, though, because we have been told that we're being misled, that in fact there is abundance of revenue for us to make these decisions, that for some reason we're being told that that money all has to be kept in reserve. And I need to know. I got asked by somebody on Saturday who I highly respect that does an incredible amount of work in this community for homeless people. If this is true, why aren't we doing more for homeless people? And I said, that's a darn good question. If it's true that we have, why are we keeping all this money in reserves, as Mr. Meehan has said? Why are we doing that? So I need an answer, and I asked Jan to please explain this, because if in fact I'm being misled, I need to know that.
I am very grateful that you asked that question. I'm going to go down to the podium and walk you through just a couple of slides, but I think it will also help the public and you. Give me just a second.
You asked her to present this, right?
I did.
That's not it. You just asked her to present it. Okay.
No, I did yesterday.
for
During
heaven's
my budget discussion, I said, people are hearing that we have revenue that is not being allocated, and we clearly have some needs. I'll talk a little bit about what the need was in a minute that the person brought up to me.
I appreciate the opportunity. So what I'd like you to walk you through is a governmental budget. What you have before you is in the popular report. This is one of the ones Mr. Meehan has
Keeps bringing
presented.
up. Well,
No, sir.
Well, it's
Sir,
actually
no, he's
in-
looking at the screen.
It's
I'm
actually
sorry.
in your popular report.
Giving her something.
And it's one of the first graphics. So in the report, Jamie, it's not going to let me.
Can we afford a new
In the
mouse?
report, one of the first things I wanted you to look at, this box I've highlighted is the current and other assets. So in it is $447 million. So one of the first things I want to make sure that we're real clear about is what is represented in your cash, because I've always heard it said you are sitting on so much cash, and at times we are, and I can give you a really good example. You have a $1.4 million capital budget, so everything that you've got appropriated in the capital budget is not always spent within 3 months of when you get it. I can give you an excellent example when you go to build a road. Based upon the clerk's requirement, you appropriate and you say, we want to build this road. We have to have the cash in place when we go to procure it. So when it comes before you and you're awarding it, we have to have the entire $2 million for a road, not just a piece of it. Now, that road takes 2 to 3 years to build. So you're sitting on that money for quite a while, and that's often what you're seeing is that we're sitting on a lot of cash. Another good example, this is a Kodak moment of 9/30/17. So just as if you got paid at the first of the month and I took a Kodak moment of your checking account, you may have $2,000 sitting in there, but you know you have a mortgage payment of $1,000 that's coming up in 4 days. So you really can't take that you have all this money sitting in your checking account because you know what has to go through at the end of the month. Okay, having said that, Jamie, if you'll go to the next one. What you really want to look at is this unrestricted net position. Now, what that means in the accounting world, that is unrestricted money. That is the money you have available to take and use however you want when you're programming your budget. And in this report at 9/30/17, your governmental activities, remember we've got government and business, is $125 million. You can go ahead and click it. Now, if we add them all up, your cash at 9/30/17 is $837 million, and according to this report, you're sitting on $352 million that's unrestricted. And that's the part where they're telling you you have a lot more money to go into. Well, let me go through the next couple of steps. So in a corporation budget, in the corporate world, what you normally do is they'll list out their revenues, and then they'll list out their expenses, and they'll also probably plan to have some reserves. And in the corporate world, they really want to make a profit. They don't want it to really come down to a difference of zero. But that's how a corporate world works. It's not how governmental works. If you go through the next one, and then the next one. In a governmental budget, because you are budgeting all available revenues with 1 year by Florida statute, you include your cash carry forward and any revenues you anticipate to get to this balance of total available. And then in your budget, you also go down, and because you're bringing in everything that's unrestricted that you own, you're also planning your savings account at the same time. You have 4 specific reserves that you use. You use reserves that you're holding for specific things, 20% reserve, which is recommended by the Government's Finance Officers Association. That's basically a little over almost 2.5 months of operating expenses. You are dead on in what you are representing in there that you've done by resolution. We also have some reserves for salaries and then any reserves for capital that they have. So you can see yours varies a lot from a corporate budget. You by law are bringing everything that you have available. Now let me take you one step further. On page 43 of your proposed budget, this is your net budget, and the line item I want to highlight, there is your cash carryover. That represents all the money that you are going to have for the FY19 year. Now, the number we looked at before was a $350 million number. That was at 9/30/17. The way it works with us is that we take that Kodak moment in time, we project the revenue that you're going to spend during 18, the expenditures that you're going to have during 18, and at the end of the day, that's where we're projecting you'll end up at 9/30/18. So it's gone from $352 million to we're anticipating you'll be at $439. Now that includes everything. That's not one fund over another, but it's everything, including any issuances of debt or anything else. Okay, so how does that work individually? So if you look, and you hit it one more time, Jamie, if you go into your proposed book, into each of the funds, there is your beginning budget cash carry forward. It's listed in each fund. So this is a very isolated fund. This is that affordable housing fund that you have. You can see that we've placed everything that's available into the beginning. We've anticipated any revenues. This year you made a one-time transfer of $500 to assist it. And then you list out all your expenditures in the next section. And at the end, you've got your reserves. So, and if you go back, Jamie, one more slide, go forward. So going back there, and if you hit it again, Jamie, that unrestricted is included in every part of your budget. We have to. The part that you have to key to remember is it's unrestricted. There's no obligations on it, and that's actually where we start the budget at. We project what that'll be. Now, what happens if we projected wrong? when they audit the statements at 9/30/18, then we go back and see how far off we projected, and we come back to you and say, we've either over or under projected, and we adjust the budget accordingly. But by Florida law, you can only do one budget at a time, and you're to represent all the funding you have available.
Commissioner Benek, still on the board.
Yeah, thank you. And, it's complicated.
Well,
I'm not an accountant.
I think,
if I could help.
Secretary would like to say something.
When you appointed that budget restructuring committee several years ago, and they were looking at the budget, one of the first things we did is we brought them in, and I think a few of those folks were of the opinion that they're going to dig into the budget and find some fat and point it out and solve the problem and go home. And we walked them through one of the exercises, which was peel the onion. You may have heard us talking about that before, because we have, by state statute, required to talk about a $1.4 billion budget. On the other hand, we know that we can't spend more money than we bring in. Only the federal government can print money. So we took them through an exercise, and they're called Peel the Onion, and we started with $1.4 billion, and you take off the top the savings account, reserves, all the reserves across all the funds, you take that off the top, because the example I've given is if you made $50,000 a year and your Aunt Martha died and left you $100,000, you wouldn't go around telling the world that your annual budget's $150,000. But we have to count the reserves. So you take the reserves off the table, and then statutorily, the state requires us to count transfers. Well, let's transfer from one fund to another, and we count it again. So you take all these transfers out of the way, and you almost cut that budget in half from $1.4 billion down to $700,000. And then you start looking at the enterprise operations, utility being the largest one, and that's paid for by the utilities customers. You take that off the table. And then you take out the special revenue funds, like the building department and others. And then you get down to the tax funds. Well, the tax funds might total up to be $400 million or so. And then you subtract out the tax funds, the transportation trust fund, you take out the park fund, the library fund, and you get down to about $300 million, which is the general fund. And half of that is roughly the sheriff. And so the amount of money you actually have to spend after you take all of that away is under $150 million to fund the governmental operations. The idea we have a $1.4 billion budget just makes us sound like we're real important, but we're counting the reserves every year and we're counting transfers every year. When you get into the popular report, it gets down to taking all of those numbers and all those 150 funds and accounting for those. And when you see the most of the reserves, and some of them we can't touch, debt service reserve funds for the bonds that have been issued for the benefit of the government. We have the post-closure fund on the landfill that accumulates money in accordance with state and federal laws that has to be in place, so when the landfill closes, we have the money to manage it in perpetuity. So there's a lot of funds that you can't get at that cash. And so any representation that there's large sums of money that you can put your hands on to solve community issues just is not factually correct. And the Citizens Budget Restructuring Committee spent hours going over that, and they concluded that, yes, you had a revenue problem, and that's why they proposed to you that you move forward at that half-cent sales tax, because there was no way to do what the community needed with the resources available to you today. Thank you.
Any more questions, Commissioner Benek?
No, I just wanted to say that, it is important, and I appreciate Mr. Meehan looking at this closely. It's complicated. We do need to, we do have, the court system is here with a very valid request. So I hope that as we move along in our budget, and we do have the option during the year to fund some things when we do have revenues that are available that we did not anticipate. We hope we know better come September where we're at. And certainly some of the one-time things like portable netting system at GT Brasoft softball, $30,000. I mean, something like that I would hope we could find the funding for as we go through the parks planning. The last thing I just want to mention, because I did have a meeting with the clerk to talk about historical resources and how we can better protect some of our historical resources. And I'm only bringing that up because I asked the question whether or not we could fund that out of building permit fees. I was told probably not, but I am probably going to ask when we get on that question on Thursday. Because Kathleen Thompson used to be overseeing those applications when they came in the building department. Kathleen has retired, as we all know, and they want to make sure. I have asked for the resolution to be presented, what that board has been charged with, the Historical Preservation Board, make sure that we're not going beyond that, as this request was. So I just wanted to state that probably will come up, but that is, since it is a budget request, it's a little bit different, I think, than the one that she has in here, but they do want to make sure they have somebody who's looking after historical resources, is what the request was to me. So I said I would bring it up to see if it could be funded out of building fees or not, but I haven't, not sure I got an absolute answer yet. I'm going to try to figure that out.
I have plenty of commissioners on the board. Is there anyone that wants to speak specifically about this? If not, Commissioner Whitmore.
The reserves, I've always, the reserves that we're using are 2.5 months to operate in case we needed to correct. That's 20%.
You have a 20% reserve that you've established by resolution, and that's roughly equates to 2.4 months out of the year.
Previously, I mean, for years, when, in my other world, it was 5 months, and that's what we had heard from Rick Ashley that worked for the clerk for many years. And that was the goal of the smaller cities, to have that. So that's not correct.
Well, actually, what you're following falls in line, what I'm saying is it falls in line with the government finance officer's recommendation
Right.
of best budgeting practices.
So really, there are other governments that are
And the theory being,
higher.
yours is you have such a large budget that if you needed to in an extreme situation, you can shift easier than perhaps a smaller city unit. And within 2 months' time, the theory being, you should be able to shift, and if there's catastrophic,
Right.
you would be able to get a credit line, or you're just looking for short-term cash needs, is what you're looking for.
And that's what I've always learned. It was for catastrophic events that you'd have to operate government for, I guess, us, 2.4 months.
But you are in line with the best practices of the nation.
Thanks.
And the additional reserves that you might have are what generates your AAA credit rating.
Yeah.
The more you have, the more comfort the credit markets have in who you are and what you are. At one point in time, we had sufficient reserves that help us withstand the recession without having a tax increase. And those excess reserves we call the Budget Stabilization Fund,
All right, any
or
more
some call a
questions?
rainy day fund.
I do have commissioners on the board. Is there any more questions on reserves?
I just
after
wanted
Jan?
to offer that, Mr. Meehan, anytime you want to come by, I'll walk you through everything we have. Our book is very open, so I'll help any way I can.
That all for Jan. Anybody else have questions on reserve? Not, I'm actually the next on the board. In my budget meeting yesterday, I discussed with Jan and Ed, I was told that we have enough money in the reserves and the cash flow to come back to finance everything of the non-recurring items that are on here, except for the sheriff's cars and stuff, because the sheriff's cars only go if we flag his extra deputies. So, Jan, could you kind of walk us through that? So we could do the non-recurring items, which gets to net or whatever. At least that was what I was told, that money is there and available now.
Sure. Jamie, can we go to the flagged item where it lists, if you go back? So within the general fund, I think our recommendation is for the non-recurring, is that the sustainable camera funding, you are funding a piece of it, around $50,000 this year. Our recommendation would be for us to go back, work with Charlie Bishop, come back to you with a recommendation, and we probably will be able to get that, perhaps not all at once, but closer in time. Going down, Commissioner Trace is correct, that went with the excluding the sheriff's piece.
Excuse me, let me go back to that sustainable camera funding. We think if we break that into smaller pieces and fund it over time, we can deal with all the cameras that Charlie is challenged with managing and the data behind those. So maybe we could fund that over a 4-year period. We can come back to you later with that.
On the next page, the next one that is non-recurring is within the park fund, and it's Charlie's $30,000 of netting. We do believe, probably because of the small amount, by the end of the year, we should be able to take care of that one. The two within Public Works, the $50,000 gateway and the $1 million shell placement, as you remember, you do have a sufficient reserve within transportation. You could do a one-time event for this $1 million shell, if that's what you like, and that would, we do have the funds for that, coming out of reserves.
And that would not impact the 20% reserve.
Correct.
Okay, I have people on the board, I don't know if you have your own issues you want to bring up, or if you're asking specific questions on what we just did. So I have people on the board, I'm going to say, if you want to speak just on this, raise your hand. Commissioner Whitmore and then Commissioner Benak.
Well, $1 million came out of a hat. It was never recommended by our staff, and our commissioner brought it, and all due respect, Commissioner Trace, but you just came up with it out of a hat number. And I remember you saying, well, I just asked him, what about $1 million? So that's not a specific number of what we really need. And
I will just say, I did not just come out of the hat. I did had to talk with Director Chad on this and said, what is that could we do? And he is way behind on Shell, and I've talked to a lot of people, and that's what he said he needed.
Well,
I will be happy not to necessarily do that and use this year as saying, we have a need to get more Shell on the dirt roads. If we want to take it out of this year's budget, I have no problem with that.
Okay, only because like last year when we had extra money, you requested like I forgot how many public works people, which we needed. I just, there's other needs, and to have this not come up from our staff with that large amount of money has always made me nervous, that's all.
Okay, Commissioner Benak.
Yeah, in regards to the shell paving, I recall, I've been around for a long time, that we had a plan to do paving of shell roads over time that had been funded before. I don't know if we have that again, but I'm certainly in favor of having a plan to pave shell roads with funding and setting funding aside. I don't have a problem. I agree with Carol that maybe $1 million was thrown in there, and maybe you would talk to them and that's what it would take. But certainly we could have a plan to pave the roads over, just like we're talking about, funding the cameras over time. So is that something that I could say I certainly would support, having a plan to pave the shell roads?
We can come
Identifying
back
those.
with both of those issues and show you how that impacts the funds and the programs. And we can do that in a board meeting or a workshop and show you how it would work and the implications over the long haul, and have Chad and Charlie Bishop talk about the issues.
We already have $600,000 in that plan,
Commissioner Johnson.
FYI.
Yeah, I guess I'm struggling with that we've suddenly come up with this money for the non-recurring events that we didn't, originally budget for, and we're now saying, well, we have some excess funds in the transportation fund that we can pull the $1.05 million out of reserves. I'd be kind of curious with all these different funds, how much over the 20% reserves are in there that we can sit there and potentially look at
That makes
for
sense.
other,
They would have to
Thank
stay
you.
in that.
well, right, saying that category. But I mean, what you're telling me, if I heard you correctly, is that $1 million we have in excess reserves in the transportation fund. How much more do we have in there that we could possibly?
When we went, one of the first workshops that you had on the budget took you through budget by fund, and we went through the reserves in each fund. I don't expect you to remember all those numbers. We do. We'll come back to you and do a refresh as to how much money is in each fund, how much is there for the 20%, how much is there in excess of 20%, and what do we project to do with that money over time. And
That'd be
that's
great.
a very good question, to come back and see that there's not a huge amount of money, but some funds are healthier than others.
Right.
Also would like to put a plug in for the historical, but I will wait for the discussion we'll have on Thursday, just to say, Commissioner, is everybody off now on the one thing we just discussed? All right.
May I add to the book that we just gave you the proposed book has the budget by fund in the back of it. So it's a quick reference, but I agree with that. You can't remember all of it. It's a lot.
So if we go through all this, we can kind of see where the excess
Yes.
funds are. Some
Yes.
good bedtime reading.
It is.
Commissioner DeSabatino.
I think I kind of know what Commissioner Ball's been thinking about. You know, my 8th year up on here, and no stranger to, we sit here meeting after meeting, flagging items that we think is important. People come from the community with flagged items that they think are very critical. And I'm primarily speaking for the sheriff's office. They think it's critical with our growing population that he needs 11 more full-time officers, and that means also capital that can come out of impact fees. And now we're looking at this possible $4+ million, we don't know when we have to pay back, if we have to pay back. But I know if the bank made a rounding error and it's not to your benefit, trust me, you're still
Get it.
paying the bank back.
Yeah.
So this is what I kind of say every year, because today we're going to be voting on setting the millage. And here we go.
Yeah.
If you set it at the rate that's proposed, then there's no wiggle room in that. If you set it a little higher and take into consideration some of these major items, it gives us room and time to get the final figures. So that's what I'm saying. If for, I'm sure Neil will come up with the sheriff's budget, but it looks like it's 1.2 plus his capital and maybe some other items. Build that in for now and then see what we come up with, because once you set this, there's no turning back. So if you gave yourself a little wiggle room, it's not saying we're going to increase it, it's just saying that we have options at this point. So that's where I'm going with it.
Did you make a motion, or are we still discussing?
Well, we're still discussing because I don't have the full amount that we would like to add in. But for now, it would be the 1.250 for the sheriff and maybe some other items, and just build it in as a cushion. And if we get the 9% from the tax collector or the property appraiser, and then we have that money, we don't have to surcharge it. But when you lock yourselves in, there's no turning back. As you said, we have to wait to find out what the budget is. So I'd rather err on the side of caution. You have this money that you could, spend, but if not, then you have to really dig into your reserves or cancel programs if you want this or that. It's my 2 cents.
Okay. Commissioner Benak.
Well, Commissioner DeSabatino has been very consistent,
Yep.
which is, I think, a good thing for a elected official to be. However, I totally disagree because of the fact that these are the good times again. You know, we're at a state in our budget where we're taking in more revenue than we have in a long time because of the values going up significantly. I think our question is, and I think it's a really good question that was asked about the greater than 20% reserves. Because when this issue hit, and I got to admit, I was sitting on a beach when I was reading it, and I'm pretty sure what I read was that even though the property appraiser is estimating that we're going to be lower than this 9%, we don't really believe that. We think we're going to have the money that we need to meet our budget as we've set it, or that we're going to have the excess and reserves to be able to cover it. There was no, we need to cut this now. At least that's the way I read the budget letter that was sent to us. So clearly we have the funding to meet most of our needs. I do like the idea of looking at the one-time expenses and figuring out how we can do that, but I also like the idea of making sure that we sharpen that pencil and look at if we do have excess revenues over reserves, how are we going to fund that? Because some of these things are important needs. And when that was brought to me was regarding homeless people in Manatee County and the fact that when they come out of the hospital, they have nowhere to go. And that's a big issue. You know, it's not going to be easy to solve. I did tell Adele when I was talking to her that I would bring up the issue of the real estate. That might be the easiest thing, but putting together a program to deal with that, that's not easy, and she'd have to run that by us. So I did bring that up to staff, and I'm not proposing any funding for that at this time. But that's just an example of things that if we in fact do have excess reserves. As in regards to the sheriff, we have funded not all of his request. We have funded at least half of it, correct?
10.
10 10 new,
12. Two for Anna
Anna
Maria.
Maria, yes.
It's 12.
12. So I agree that the demands on the sheriff are growing with population, absolutely. But it's not going to be, and it's, as far as I know, maybe not since the first year we funded his request in its entirety. But we are dedicating funding based on the projected population increase, how many additional people he needs. So I do not, and I know what Robin's saying is true. We could set the millage higher today and then always lower it. But I don't see any reason, given our financial situation, to set a higher millage at this time.
Commissioner Ball.
And sometimes, sitting up here, I have a hard time believing I hear some of the things I hear. My 6 years here has been very interesting in that regard. You know, we're talking about a budget, commissioners, that I might just mention that you all control. You are the ones designated to make the decisions concerning that budget. Not the county administrator, not Jan, not anybody else in the administration. This board. You might want to think about that. I think Commissioner Johnson had the smartest comment that I've heard so far sitting here about the 20%. We need to look at that. As far as a tax increase, I can tell you, Robin, I love you to death, always have. But Commissioner Benak was correct in that regard. These are happy times for revenue. You know, our revenues are up. People are moving here to Manatee County. Homes are going up in value, not down. It's called making wise decisions on how you spend your money and living within your means. And I think we have a problem doing that. And I think we deal with this every single year. You know, we all have our ideas of what priorities are. The priority for all of us needs to be the safety of our citizens and people coming to this county to visit. That's what it's all about. It's not about anything else. It's about the citizens and the people coming to this county. That's our job. I hear about homelessness. We have a real problem with that. Commissioner Benak brought that up. Only one I've heard bring it up. And yet we can't even fund $51,000 for a guardian monitor to help look out for people that need assistance in this county. Everything else is more important. All right, I'm not going to push it. Whatever. But, you know, I don't think anyone on this board, including myself today, has enough information, except maybe Steve, to make the decision about increasing millage in this county, or even, I got to tell you, even setting millage or making any decisions on the budget, because I don't think any of us really know what the reserves are, how much money this county has that's in excess of what we need. We don't ask the right questions. And notice I say we, I included myself in it. So, you know, I'm sitting here thinking that I felt so bad that I had missed some of the workshops on the budget with flagged items. I felt so bad about it. What difference does it make?
Hillary.
You know, here we are. The same argument, the same things every year after every year. Why are we not being smart And you know what? I think probably one of the smartest things we did at the port, as the Port Authority, was when we voted to have Steve look at the budget. See what kind of shape the port's really in. Just saying. Anyway, you know what? I will not vote to increase millage. I think you need to learn to live within your means and figure out what your means are. I don't think any of us really know today. Now we're looking at an additional, I heard maybe 10 million, but now they're saying maybe 4 million. But gee, maybe, we don't know, do we, with the state? Maybe. We don't even know where we're going to end up with revenues, but maybe we might have enough. So what are we talking about, people? You can't set your budget on a maybe. You can't, set your millage, leave it where it's at. For God's sakes, the people of this county pay enough in taxes. We're the ones that need to make the tough decisions. Thank you.
Commissioner Whitmore.
All right. The role of the county administrator is to present us with a budget, and Vanessa is correct. It's up to us to decide to accept it or not. I will not support raising the millage. I never have since '98. I don't know anyone that I know, or you know, Robin, that wants us to raise the millage. They are so upset. Some people in our circles are so upset that the infrastructure sales tax got approved. The schools had 2 taxes approved. And I have not heard one citizen say that they want our taxes increased at all. So we have to live within our means, and I totally believe that. You mentioned the discharge in the homeless. So somebody left? Okay, jeez. You mentioned you're hearing the homeless, that they're discharging them with no place to live. I beg to differ. I still work in senior care, and I'm at the hospitals every week, and there's patients there that are homeless. In both hospitals, the hospitals have to keep them until they have a discharge plan. I talk to the case managers all the time because they try to get where I work at home health to see them at a home if they have one. We've actually worked where we've seen patients at the one-stop turning points. Do you want me to wait? Should I wait, Robin?
I'm sorry, I wanted Jan to look at something.
Okay, I mean, we've actually gone to one stop to treat patients. So to say that they're being discharged with no place to go, a case manager would be fired if they did that. They have to be able to go somewhere, some type of plan, some type of follow-up. That would be negligent. So, but I do agree, and I'm very close, near and dear to one stop. So, of course, they've expanded their model from what they originally were, and they do a lot more stuff now. So I'm not saying that what they're saying is not true. What I'm saying is what you've been told is totally not correct. I know that firsthand knowledge. Not going to support a tax increase. We're going to have to try to figure out how to live within our budget. Ed, the suggestion that, and all due respect, I'm going to say it respectfully to you, if there's a way you and Jan can come up with any funds that are over and above the 20%, I think as commissioners we'd like to, and maybe we should have asked that a long time ago. We don't lay it off on everybody. We should have asked this a long time ago during our hearings when we've been meeting since May. So I would ask that, and then these recurring funds, I understand. I still think we'll be able to come up with some monies after the property appraiser hopefully is wrong, and then we'll go from there. But please, some of this stuff is not true, and I don't support raising the millage rate.
Commissioner Benek.
Yeah, okay, I didn't want to get into a big discussion about that. It was really just a point
Yeah.
of saying that there are needs in this community if there are excess revenues. And we all know that. I mean, everybody knows that up here. However, as Commissioner Trace did last year, I think it was last year.
Last year.
When
I've
you,
only been here 2 years.
Yeah, she asked for
we knew that, there might be a change in the revenue situation, and you identified the priority. And I know we do this with flagging. And I would like to do that for the guardianship program. And direct staff, give them direction. I think that is what we have to do at this point. That is our job. I agree with Commissioner Baugh. But like you said, hey, if that additional revenue comes around, we need to hire those additional people out at Public Works. I would like to say if that additional revenue comes around, I think we should fund the guardianship program. I was hoping Commissioner Baugh might agree with me on that, but she's
I'll
not.
agree
I
on
will
it.
second, I will second
I agree
that.
on it, yeah.
I will
Okay.
second that.
So I'm going to make a motion to that effect.
You don't need to, we flagged it.
No,
Well,
no,
but
you-
we're already done flagging.
No, we're
I
not.
think her
How does
no,
this
we
work?
made a motion last year, if we're doing it the way, basically that if there's extra money, the first thing that will be funded is the Guardian monitor.
And I am going to make a disclaimer, because I'm glad that we talked about it long enough so my brain could remember this. The court system is the responsibility of the state.
Amen.
And we have to be very, very careful taking on specialty programs. I have been very concerned about the request that the state attorney has brought forward to us. I agree that the state attorney needs to upgrade. I feel terrible when I see those. Oh, I don't feel terrible. I think it's weird when I see the attorneys walking between buildings carrying
Just now.
huge amounts of paper.
Suitcases.
Seems very strange in this day and age that that's the way a court system works. But the court system is the responsibility of the state to fund it. We start taking on more responsibility. There's nothing that the state would love better than to chastise local government for collecting too much money, but then hand us new requirements to fund. It's just been the way they've done things in the last few years, and I have a concern about that. But I think this guardianship monitor program is something that is not funded by the state and is something we need to protect our elderly citizens. I was very concerned about the presentation. I also have a brother, this is what he does, is elderly law. He's in Michigan, it's very different, but he and I had a conversation about it this summer. This is something that I would like to see if we do have additional funding that we would like to. So I'm going to make that a motion that if we have additional funding, that we do make that a priority.
We already seconded it.
Who did?
Okay.
I did.
No, Commissioner.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Okay, Trace.
Okay.
Whatever. Okay, before we vote on that, I have a lot of other people on the board, and then we'd have to also go to citizen comment. Commissioner DeSabatino.
It's not regarding this item.
Should we just vote on this first?
All
and
right,
then-
okay, let's make sure everybody that wants to be on it, raise your hand, then Commissioner Ball, on this item only, and then Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Benek, even though I wasn't up on the dais, I was listening. I just needed some air. I appreciate the motion. But I still say that we need to look at the whole picture. And it really concerns me at the whole picture of the budget and really make some tough, strong decisions on what this board's priority are. Because you know what? It's your job and our job, I should say, and the people hold us responsible. So I do appreciate the motion. I'm going to vote for it, but I might add that it's not just for the elderly. It's also for homeless. It's also for anyone, no matter what the age, that has any handicaps where they can't, make good decisions, whether it's a short amount of time or permanently. I did mention when this came before us before, my own brother could possibly still be here. So,
By judge, right.
Commissioner Johnson, or actually Commissioner Benak had a quick comment, then Commissioner Johnson.
I just wanted to respond and make it clear that unfortunately, once again, we don't know exactly where we're going to be. We don't know. We can't say that. We've got this $4 million possible hit. We don't know. So I'm just putting that out there, continuing this, saying that is the priority if the money is available. It's possible it won't be.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, I guess, going to the ad litem thing, since we're trying to narrow it, but to me, I have this problem with all the constitutional officers. We have no benefit of looking at their budgets. We don't know how much money they bring in, and yet they come in here and ask us for, some type of subsidy, basically, to their thing. So, it's like we're almost operating in a vacuum. They're sitting there saying, hey, we need this, we need that. And we're like, well, what about all the other revenue that you bring in, that the state gives you? And where's that spent? And we end up looking like the bad guy if we turn them down, type of thing. And it just seems that there's something wrong with the system, to me. Why aren't we allowed to sit there and, why aren't they required to provide us their budgets and their,
We should-
income and expense
That's
things?
a good idea.
Because then we'll have at least a full picture as to where they're at and where they're spending their money. We've got a great staff here. We have a finance people that can look at that and could report to us and say, hey, this is where their money's coming from, and this is where they're spending it, and this is where the shortfall is, and where the county needs to step up and, fill in that gap. So, I just think the system is amiss when it comes to constitutional officers.
Okay, any other, just on this one particular item, then I'll open up for public comment on the one particular item. Okay, does anyone from the public wish to speak only on the vote for the guardianship program? Monitor. Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. I think, though, it's, sitting up here, though, it's like we're the last resort for the citizens, and unfortunately, sometimes we have to pick which citizens we are able to help. We want to help them all. At least I do. If we had our way, we would help them all. So it is a very tough thing. And I know last year I really, I know we had drainage issues, and unfortunately Irma proved that we had a lot worse problems than we thought we did. So we do the best we can up here. So we do have a motion made by Commissioner Benak to prioritize, if we have extra money, that this would be the number one thing paid on if we have the extra money in the budget. Seconded by Commissioner Whitmore. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Chair votes aye, motion passes 6-1. Commissioner Johnson voted nay.
5-1.
5-1, excuse me, 5-1. All right, Commissioner DeSabatino.
And that amount was 41,000. That's
It's 51.
Recurring.
Recurring, 41.
41.
40.
Recurring.
Yeah, 41.
41, it says right here.
May I correct that?
Yeah.
There was an email that came from Judge Williams. I sent him an email and requested the total figure and asked that it be sent to all commissioners. I think it's about 51, if I'm not mistaken. Because
Jan,
I
do you
had
have-
asked Jan about it, and she said they were still waiting for the correct figure to come in.
We will-
And we did receive it.
We'll double check and
Thank you.
verify and make.
It's just the position anyway.
Right.
So don't.
It's the position.
It wasn't the money.
All right,
It's the
Commissioner
position.
DeSabatino.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Ball.
Yeah, just for my own defense, I asked, in Commissioner Ball's speech, she indicated that public safety is number one, and I'm a broken record, 8 years supporting the sheriff's office. That's 1.2. And I asked her to look up what, and this is just building in, just as a cushion, it's not saying we're going to, but it means if you go to your millage proposed rates under unincorporated MSTU, we have currently 6.109. This would be 0.0361, which equates to $7 for a household valued after all your deductions of $250,000. And when you say you've never heard anybody say that you don't want to, in every community meeting in South County, I say, if I raised your taxes $7 to $10 a year for public safety, would you vote for it? Every hand in the room goes up, and Lori Gale is shaking her head. She's been there. This is South County. So I'm saying for $7 a household a year, that's what I'm asking for.
Okay, Jan,
Just-
I believe Jan has a comment on that.
No, I just wanted to clarify, make sure that's on the countywide millage, the $7. You quoted the
Point,
0.6109, which is unincorporated.
right, because the county,
It's in the countywide. The sheriff's funding
sheriff,
is in the
okay,
county.
so either way, it's
Yes.
0.0361,
Yes.
so 6.4326, 0.0361, 786, it's still 6.4687. And that's just building in a cushion that I'm asking for, and that's my, motion.
Okay.
Can you state your motion a
Uh,
little
Sorry, yeah,
clearer,
I-
please?
My motion would be to give a cushion at this moment of
I
0.0361.
need you to slow down with the numbers, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Saying to raise the millage, don't say give a cushion.
0.03.
To change
Wait,
the
okay.
current proposed FY 19 budget
Go slow.
countywide.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Are you with me?
She's at countywide.
Yeah, we were at a different spot when you started again. I'm sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to change the FY 19 proposed millage. That's currently 6.4326. To add to that 0.0361, which would make the millage 6.4687.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Any seconds?
Can only
Hearing
can
no
only try
seconds,
South County. I'm
motion.
sorry. $7 a year.
Really
You done,
seven.
Commissioner
I
Desampton?
am done. That's my
Commissioner-
last budget.
Commissioner Whitmore?
Okay, I'm gonna give up on the animal care or the,
Commissioner Whitmore, could we take a
oh,
10-minute
thanks. Yeah, sure.
10-minute
What the
break?
heck?
10-minute
Go
break. We'll
ahead.
be back at 10:20.
Oh, it was you? It's all right. It was you.
All right, we are back. Commissioner Whitmore.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid now. Okay. I have, I know it didn't seem like I had any support for the dispatchers, and I am asking, and we have had no positions added since 2009. I'm asking for one animal care specialist. If we have extra money, and all this person does is clean the kennels, take care of the animals. They haven't had a position added since 2009 when the census was 150. It's almost 300 consistently. And I'm asking if we have any extra money, if you would consider it. They have not had a position added in this department since 2009.
What department?
It's an animal care specialist. It's just a person that cleans the dog kennels, it feeds them, does the laundries, does the manual labor, and that's why we have such a big overturn. I'm sorry, I'm glad it's all funny to some people. It's not. You know where my passion is healthcare and this, and I'm not going to give up. So I have every right to bring this up, even though nobody supports me, but I am going to bring it up.
All right, no second. All right.
No, no. I'll second it for discussion. It's not that we don't support you. It's just that
If we
we
had
have this
extra
whole
money.
list now, and we're going to just starting everything back in, but you guys aren't willing to
Yes.
dance. So what good is it?
I think we
I
did
can say I
dance.
can make a motion that if there's money left over in the budget, I want 1.250 for the sheriff, and I think safety is more important.
Was this a motion?
No,
No, we're
No.
discussing, I think.
No, I'm just making a statement that all of these items, if there's money left, let's just fund them all.
All right,
This
Commissioner
department,
Benak.
Madam Chair, this department hasn't had a staff person since 2009 to clean up dog cages, and they're desperate. We used to put down 50%, we had a 53% save rate when we started in 2009, which means all the rest got put down. Now we're at 97, so there's a dog there that's been there 2 years. And we have people that are actually taking care of these animals with the same census as 2009. Yes, they're not human beings, and I understand that, but somebody's got to stick up for them too. And I know you guys all care, and I know this is a hard time right now, budget. But I mean, Priscilla got a bunch of positions last year. We just got a guardian position. I'm going to try. I mean,
I
you know,
seconded
you got to
your
respect me for that. I'm not giving up.
Was it a motion?
Was it an
Yeah, I'll
actual?
make a motion.
Okay, and I
Well, she did.
second
She
it.
Did
seconded
she
it.
second? All right,
seconded
all right, well, state your motion so that, make sure that Vicky actually has the motion.
My motion is to add a position to animal services for one position for an animal care specialist if We have more revenues than we projected in
All
our
right,
budget.
my one question on this, though, is,
About 40.
does that come by,
About
below the
39.
Guardian sponsorship? Who gets, if we only have, who gets priority? Although, we've already voted that one in.
If we have more money, we'll bring them back and you can make a decision at
Right, we'll
that
make a
time.
Okay.
decision.
Okay, Commissioner, all right, let me, wait 1 second. We're only talking on the vote now. I do have people on the board. So Commissioner Ball, and then if you want to speak just on this, raise your hand. Commissioner Ball, then Commissioner Benak.
I just have a question for Ed. I'm curious as to, and I forget, I just can't remember off the top of my head. Back before the layoffs, before the recession hit, how many employees did we have and where are we today?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you'd be so impressed if I had that
1700.
memory.
We were 17.
I know that during the downturn in '09 and '10, we've reduced the workforce by almost 300 positions. We have added positions over the years, not necessarily those 300 that we took out, but other positions in utilities and other positions in the building department. And so the final count today, I'll have to get you that information.
17.
Commissioner Ball.
Ed, those two departments that you refer to are self-funded departments, is that
Correct.
correct?
Yes,
Okay.
that's why when you say we reduced, when I said we reduced almost 300 positions, most of those positions we took out were in the general fund and funded through property taxes in Public Works and the Transportation Trust Fund and the like. That was the vast majority of those. Those we've added back have not been in those departments.
If I may make one more statement on that before the vote. Carol, I will look at it. If we get more money and we're looking at
that's all I
things,
ask.
you know, I'll take a look, but until then, I'm just staying neutral on
All
it.
right, Commissioner Benak.
Yeah, and I am a tad bit confused, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this whole process. We went through each one of these budgets. Animal Services was a budget. They had a desired unfunded request, which was customer service and front desk lead. We didn't fund that, was not flagged. Public Safety, Emergency Communications Center is where this dispatchers for animal services comes up. I don't understand what Carol is asking us to fund. Does not appear to me to be a emergency communications center dispatcher for animal services. So I'm confused. What are you're trying to get somebody there to clean up the shelter. That doesn't seem to me to be a ECC dispatcher for animal services.
Madam Chair?
Commissioner Whitmore.
Well, I tried to get it, and nobody seconded it on the dispatchers, and I have talked to Animal Services staff, I've talked to Bob. They are desperate for help, and they don't have a fund for overtime, or when their census goes up, they don't have they don't have a reserve where they can ask for people to come in and help when their census does go up. This has been a need, and I knew that I wasn't going to get 98,000, so I figured something, and I'm not sure, Bob, what those positions even pay. I was guessing between 39 and 40 something, but I'm not sure. I don't know if you need Bob to even tell you that. But I just figured if I could at least get back down to the basics. And, you know, in all fairness to me, Betsy, Priscilla brought up these 6 positions last year out of the hat, and they weren't on anything either.
Okay.
So that's why I'm asking.
Requested last year.
That's why I'm asking.
Can I clarify then? Because I still, before I vote on a motion, I need to know
You may
what I'm voting
clarify
on.
on the,
So this is not a
No.
dispatcher for animal services.
It's an
This is
animal-
not the desired unit.
No, it's an animal care specialist in animal services
That's different.
to clean cages, feed them, do the laundries, take them out for a walk for about 300 animals.
Okay.
That's all, and I'm asking for
Then I
one.
wanted to clarify that because it was not the flagged item. It is a new request, which I'm not, I mean, I agree. Commissioner Voss says it's our job to go through and look at the budget. I personally feel we do exactly that when we have each and every county department come before us. They're the hands on the ground. They know what hands in the ground, that's not the way to put it. Feet on the ground.
On the ground, hands on.
Nice.
Your hands on, with feet on the ground.
Crawling.
They're the ones that, are dealing with what they need in each department. But yeah, certainly, Commissioner Whitmore's there. She says they didn't even ask for this, but she knows it's needed. I think that's fine. I don't see any problem with her saying that, and maybe staff have told her that, maybe people in the public have told her that, and I absolutely think that's exactly what you're doing, is you're out there, you're working it, you're understanding what the need is, and you've come up with a motion. But there is a process that we do go through, and I personally feel comfortable with the process, and if I want to look into it, like talking to Adele about homeless, then I'm going to do that, and I'm going to research it, and I'm going to do that. That's my job as a commissioner. But I don't think it's fair to say that this budget that we go through in meeting after meeting and sit there with the staff and go through it, that is the process. And if I want to research more and I want to say, I don't agree with staff, we need more people at the shelter. That should have been the priority. That should have been what they brought. I think that's what you're saying, Carol.
Okay, I'm actually, before I call on you, I'll have Commissioner Whitmore, and then we're going to vote on this motion. After the motion, I'm going to make a motion. Our problem, I did not realize I started some kind of precedence last year. I had no idea. I'm going to say that really, we should take these flag items. We should make sure that we know what they are listed. And when we get the actual budget in September or something, then we should prioritize them. Right now, I'm afraid that we're going to get, we all
picking
want,
and choosing.
we want everything that is on there until we
reflate it.
actually get the money.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why, I mean, I did not realize I did something different last year, so I apologize for that. But it seems to me we should say, Ed, when we get the final budget, let's make sure we only have a list of the flagged items. Nothing, come through. I guess we're going to add one to it. And then we will say, if we have $5, we'll find, if we want to budget something for $5. If we have $1 million, we'll go through and fight this fight with what we actually have. Right now, we don't know, we want everything. So after this, I'm going to pass the gavel and I will make that motion. Commissioner Whitmore.
Just a final comment. Last year, Animal Services did come up, last year, not this year, and requested those dispatchers. And it was really a rough discussion. And after that meeting, the lady that was in charge of adoptions quit because she was so disappointed on the way that we, our attitude or the way we talked about Animal Services, so she quit. And that got filtered down, and I can't even remember her name. She was at the presentation sitting at the desk, but she left the next day. She said she just couldn't work for, the leadership didn't support how hard they were working. That's her impression. And if this doesn't go, that's fine. At least if we can get them some kind of help. They're taking care of their budget. They have staffing for 80 something or 150 would consider dogs and cats, and they got 300. So that's the only reason why I brought it
Anyone
up.
else only on the kennel help? I'm going to open up for public comment. Anyone from the public wish to speak only on this one particular issue? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Could you please reread the motion, Vicki?
Yes, motion was made by Commissioner Whitmore to, asking to add a position to Animal Services for one animal care specialist if there is extra money. And Commissioner DeSabatina seconded the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Chair votes aye. Motion would pass. Going to pass this over. I'm going to make a motion that as soon as we know the actual budget, September, October, that we come through and we will decide then on which one of these flagged items get into the budget.
Second.
Second. Yeah.
You
If I
can't
could
second, you're the chair.
recommend,
Second.
I can.
I made the
The
motion.
chair.
I made.
She
she's
made the motion, I
Oh, you
seconded
can
it.
second. All right, I'm
I'm
sorry.
not the chair right this second.
Robert's rules, you're right.
Madam
that
Chair?
as soon as we get the final numbers from the property appraiser that he certifies to the state, then we will schedule that.
Good.
Madam Chair, that's exactly what I was going to make a motion, that all these items that are on here, they're still flagged, they still have hope, and see what comes in on the budget, and then we'll set the priorities then. So, any other discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner Ball?
I pressed my button. I just wanted to say I will not be supporting that motion, and the reason I will not support it isn't, I mean, I understand what you're trying to do, but at the same time, by the time you know how much money's in the budget's already going to be ratified. So I feel like that if we're really serious about some of the things that we flagged, we should be looking at the budget today with what we know we have and see where to make changes to fit our flagged items in. I realize that because of what I'm saying, I mean, it's just me, and that's cool. I'm good with it. But that's how I feel about it. We should look at the budget more clearly. I will not support the motion.
Well, if we do that, then we have to take away from something today. So this way, it leaves everything up in the air. And to say we need more time to look into things, I mean, we've been doing this since May. And this has been our job and your summer homework to go through. And I know in the years past, I had 2.5 million that I wanted to find for the sheriff, and I spent my summer vacation finding it, but nobody agreed to fund it. So what can you do? So it's already baked in.
Another comment, please, before the vote.
I'm not the chair right now. I
She's the
think she-
chair.
Commissioner,
I'm next on the board.
yes, Commissioner Benak is next.
Thank you. I just, we make budget amendments all the time, and with additional revenue, we're going to know by September, and we might have to do a budget amendment. I mean, and that's why I think it is important that we have this number, this excess revenue, especially now that we are excess revenue, over 20% reserves. I kind of like the budget stabilization fund only because it did spell it out, and I think maybe I'm misunderstanding something, but that kind of gave me a little bit of concern when I saw excess over 20% can fund this. Well, I like a number. So I think that's the question, and especially now that we've got the potential hit, 4 million, we don't know what that is, we're going to know that. So I think what we're just saying is we're identifying these as priorities. And I think that was what our job was to do today. And that, so when we come up to it, we'll at least have voiced it during the budget process that that was a priority, but we're just got a little bit, an unusual degree of uncertainty, especially since the property appraiser said 8.1, and we think it's probably 9 again. We don't see any reason why it's not. And I haven't heard, and maybe I am not well informed, but I don't know why he says 8.1. I haven't heard that. But last year we were able to do this and fund some things, and so I'm hopeful that we will. Whatever the process is, we know we can always do a budget amendment, so.
Commissioner Whitmore?
I agree. I don't support the motion because we can do a budget amendment. I just remember, guys, and I can't believe it hasn't been brought up today, the homestead exemption is going to pass. And so, and Ed, that 20%, those monies, I was assuming is going into, so we don't have a layoff in 2020. And nobody's mentioned that today, and this is very important. As you know, I support the homestead exemption for our citizens, which he about had a stroke. I mean, who isn't going to vote for it? I'm sure some won't. And, that excess of 20% to me was you were going to put that in a, kind of what you just said, a budget stabilization or whatever you wanted to call it, so that we can meet our budget in 2020 without a layoff. We are in good, healthy, fine. I mean, look at Sarasota. I don't know what they're doing this year, but last year they were 6 million in the hole. They probably would have appreciated our 4 million, but,
Yeah.
but anyway, can you
We might be
explain?
paying their donut. We
Can
might
you
be
ex-
funding their donut.
Can you explain that, Ed? Because you haven't mentioned that, and this is like part of the budget process that we gotta, and where's that money coming from? I thought that was that excess 20%.
You have in the budget that we have before you today, set aside money, and we have that
Already set aside.
specifically for the downturn. And that's held separately from the reserves, the 20% reserves, and it's held separately from any budget, any reserves in excess of that, that we've commonly referred to as the budget stabilization fund.
What's it, the line item called? Budget stabilization, or what are you
Well,
calling it?
No, it's, you don't have anything specifically called budget stabilization. It is any reserve in excess of 20% that's not dedicated for any other purpose.
There you go. That's, okay, guys. That's what
And
he's
we
talking
can
about.
take you back through that again to show you what those numbers are by fund. The one that's most pressing is the general fund. We try and work to build that up, because the way we would do that is at the end of the year, we know, or we expect, that the revenues will come in a little higher than we anticipate. We also expect the size of this budget, that no one will spend down to the last dollar. So what they don't spend gets added to the revenue that might come in higher, and those two will go directly to reserves in excess of the 20% commonly referred to as the budget stabilization. And over time, that will build up to the point that when the next recession hits, and we will have another recession at some point in time, you will have money available to you, so you don't have to do a burn and slash to the funding of this government.
And that's a $10 million, $9 to $10 million in 2020. I'm talking about the homestead exemption.
That's
what I was told.
What we're anticipating that is a $12 million reduction.
Yeah, revenue shortfall.
Reduction.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ball.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I don't even remember now what the motion was, but at any rate, 2 comments before we vote. Number 1, it is not your job, Commissioner DiSabatino, to look at the budget and decide where we cut. You give instruction as a commission, as a board. Just thought I'd add that. Everybody seems to forget that part of it. And nothing, I'm not criticizing anybody, I'm just saying that that's not our job, to look at the budget and decide where to cut. Second of all, I think we need to remember what the primary duty is of a county commissioner, and that is public safety of our residents. So anyway, can you repeat the motion for me? Because truly, I have forgotten what it was.
Chairman Trace made a motion that as soon as the commissioners know the actual budget and it's decided, then review which flagged items to be taken.
Okay, thank you.
Can you read it again?
Sorry.
Doesn't make sense.
That as soon as the commission knows the actual budget is decided, then review the which flagged items will be taken.
I'm not going to support it.
Is that your motion?
Basically, until we actually know the motion, instead of prioritizing now.
The amount, not the motion.
In other words, the motions that we have already passed today saying we think these are important, we
that's the
will
one that
wait,
Ed
we
wanted
will
changed.
wait
Yes.
and vote on those in September instead of prioritizing
Let's
them
amend
now.
the budget.
I won't support that.
No.
Commissioner Trace, are you still on the
I
board?
totally agree with you that the budget, we are decide the budget, and I agree that now is the time on something that we need to get into the budget today. But these are items that we are saying that if we have the money, let's budget them. If we have the money. Well, we don't know if we do or we don't. I'm just saying with this motion, instead of ending up with 6 votes, which I guess I did not realize I did something different last year, instead of having 6 votes on every one of these flagged items that they're going to become, if we have the money, we'll do them. If we have the money, we do them. I say, let's just wait and see if we have the money. Now, if there's something that you feel passionate about that you need to get into the budget today, then we do on that. But that is my motion, that we will vote on them when we know whether we do have the money or we don't have the money.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
What date, Ed, does the budget have to be voted on and affirmed?
You will adopt the budget at the second public hearing in September. That's when you adopt the budget. After that, you can amend the budget,
Anytime.
as Commissioner Benak indicated. You have the ability to amend the budget after you adopt it.
Okay, so am I correct in that we will affirm this budget before we actually hear from the property appraiser about the correct amount of revenue, or will we know before?
It
We
will
vote on
probably
this
be
budget.
afterwards.
Oh, you're right.
will be
It happened
afterwards.
last time, it was after.
Okay, So, in other words, we don't have to make any decision today about anything pertaining except for millage. Am I right?
Correct.
Two positions, those two, the guardian and the
Wow.
cleaner.
You know what, I just as soon, well, never mind.
Basically, my motion is that on these things, that we do not know if we can add them or not add them to the motion, to the budget, we will wait until we know what the budget is. That is what my motion is.
Commissioner Whitmore.
And in all due respect, Commissioner Trace, I don't support it because like Betsy said, we can amend the the budget anytime. So I'm going to go ahead and call the question.
No, I'm sorry, Commissioner Benak was before you.
I made
right?
a call the question.
I'll call him Commissioner Benak first.
Thank you. So I got to understand the motion too, because we already made a motion and we already took a vote on something on two of the items, and we said that those are priorities. So is Commissioner Trace's motion to wipe out our motions? I don't understand.
Add that to it.
So can you read the motion that was passed for the one that I made about funding the guardian ad litem? So I want to.
It's just guardian. It's not
It's guardian, it's not guardian ad
not
litem.
guardian ad
It's
litem.
just guardian. Thank you.
Motion was made by Commissioner Benak to direct staff to fund the guardianship program if there is money available.
Okay. So you're saying we shouldn't be doing that until we know. And I agree, but I don't think your motion can undo my motion.
I don't think you
could
can
do
now,
that.
but basically, it will keep us from voting on every single flagged item, that if we have the money, we'll go, because basically, we could vote on every single one. If we want to, we can, that's fine.
No,
But no,
I was trying to
you are
set
the
a
first
priority.
priority now,
You are setting
Okay.
a
for this
priority.
year.
So I'm not going to support your motion because it's a process issue that you're bringing up. And I don't
it is.
think I've created a new process. I don't think I have. Just made it a priority.
Okay.
Commissioner Baugh is correct. We don't know. We're not going to know. And we're going to have to be a budget amendment because we're going to adopt a budget before we know if we have excess revenue. So I did not intend to change the budget at this time. Certainly, people are here advocating for their request. And so that was why I was trying to say, I do support that.
Commissioner
Yeah.
Ball.
And I did want to clarify, I'm sorry, I think Carol is still misunderstanding the excess revenue that goes into a budget stabilization fund is not to balance the budget because of the increased deduction. We've already planned for that within the budget. We do not need budget stabilization funds at this time to balance if that does pass. So I want to make sure that you're clear on that, Carol, because we planned for that in the budget.
But as we go for reoccurring costs, that whittles away at it. That's what Ed's always said, and it's true. But I got you. I'm partially wrong on that. I understand.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
Commissioner Ball, and then we'll,
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think that, politics is never ending. And I know that there was some politicking going on when we were on recess. So I'm glad to hear Commissioner Benak say what you did. I don't think that we need to change any of our motions that's gone on so far. But I still say I cannot support this motion because I think we should be looking at the budget and making the changes now before we ratify it on what items are important to this board. Thank you.
Commissioner Whitmore,
Call
did
the
you want to
question.
call the
I
question?
want to call the question.
Do have to have a public comment before we vote.
We got a second.
Okay. Any public comment on these flagged items?
Or on the motion?
On the motion.
Only on the motion.
motion of the flagged items?
No. No.
But I'm with you.
We called the question.
Okay. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the question is, let's repeat the question.
Call the question. It's to,
Motion.
she's got a motion on the
Yeah.
floor.
She's
Okay, the
reading the
The
motion.
motion.
On these things that we do not know if they can be added, wait until we know the budget and then add them if we can.
Okay? Everyone understand? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Please raise your hand. Motion fails. Okay, I'd like to make a motion to,
She gets.
Well, you have to
Yeah,
pass the
yeah.
gavel back.
she has the
Good.
gavel
Okay,
back,
sorry.
yes.
Okay, Commissioner DeSabatino?
Well, just like we made a motion for the Guardian and the other, I'm making a motion to fund 1.250 from the sheriff's budget if and when we have excess money, once we know what the money is.
I have a question. Would we also have to add the recurring, the one-time cost also? You would also need to add the 300 and something thousand.
Right, that
for
can
car.
come out of the impact fee fund money.
Okay, but you still have to add them with the
Add that in.
deputies.
I'm sorry.
I make a motion to our flagged item number 8 under the sheriff's budget, salaries, operating and capital of 1.250076, 11 FTEs, full-time employees, plus flagged item number 9, sheriff budget capital expenses, 322,416 for, that can come out of the law enforcement impact fee fund. Anyone second that motion?
Uh,
Public safety is number one.
I agree with that, but I don't know what kind of money you're talking about. You didn't put that in the
It's
motion.
Yes, you
1.250076.
I didn't hear it, sorry.
1.6 million
Plus
recurring.
the 300 something that would need to be with them.
22.
So about 1.6 million is what we're talking about?
With 1.3
1.2
recurring.
recurring.
Right.
Well, 1.5 is recurring, or wait, I'm sorry,
1.2 is
1.250 and 322,
I'll second that motion for discussion.
okay? You've got the chair.
Okay. All right, have no discussion on that. Anyone from the public wish to speak only on this item? All right.
Yes, Neil, yay.
Come down and state your name.
Uh-oh.
3 hours later.
I only have 20 pages.
2 hours.
Only 20 pages.
Neil Under, Comptroller for the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff regrets that he couldn't be here. We had a staff meeting to go over promotions, retirements, and other things, and so he could not make it this morning. Again, thank you for listening to our concerns in June. We appreciate the time discussing all of those at the budget workshops. Positions requested, we feel, are very critical to the operations of the agency. Again, 5 more road deputies, 4 corrections deputies, a chemist, and a crime scene tech, we feel are all critical to the operations of our agency. And again, Sheriff indicates we are losing the battle with growth in our county. We want to make sure that we keep on the proper side of crime trends. They are going up. We want to continue to work towards community policing versus being reactionary, as we just go from call to call as we go. But that is the entire message that we have. And in a side note, I am going to hand out an invitation for all of you to attend our National Night Out on August 7th. So I'm going to pass that down.
Can I?
Okay, anyone else from the public wish to speak only on this one flagged
Yeah.
item? Okay, seeing, does anyone have any questions for Neil?
I do.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Neil, I've been told, and I want to clarify, that after the last meeting, the fees that you gave us, SROs were charged differently in the schools. The fees for the guardians and us were given 3 different rates. And I'd like to know, which rate are you charging us? Because we were the highest rate that you were charging from the school board. I talked to Jan about this. Can you help? Jan brought it.
Yeah, let me,
Is the 1.1 million
I don't
that
know.
we ended, or what?
let me try to
Yeah.
rephrase the question. I think what she's asking is that we noticed some differences between
Salary rate.
salary for Anna Maria and then the school board, and you and I met together and we talked about why things were being charged differently, and that in the following budget, we want to fully load each of those for vehicles and everything else, right?
Okay,
Maintenance
so
costs.
our conversation, so just so you have an idea, for Anna Maria, we do not, for what our position requests are, those are for entry-level deputies. So those are for new deputies. For Anna Maria, we are taking an existing deputy out of the road or wherever else that may be and putting them out there. So those are second class, first class deputies rather than entry-level deputies or initial deputies going in. So the cost is higher for those individuals.
No,
that
we're
help?
actually, we're getting charged more.
Yeah, I think the question was, Neil, that, for example, for the Anna Maria, the uniform charges were less there, but they were more on our side, but the salaries were
Again,
the same.
The
even though-
salaries is, again, I'm asking for an initial position at entry level or more as our initial deputies come on, and that is all. For Anna Maria deputies, those, again, we're requesting basically backfill of employees that we have moved from one place over to Anna Maria.
And what about the school resource officers? I heard that we were being charged more than they.
And again, if you go into uniforms and the detail of the contracts, what we did was those contracts have been in existence for quite a while, set rates of what we charge for operational costs and so on. So most often, a uniform difference would be on new positions. Those are for all new uniforms for the incoming deputy. For the contract with either the school board or with Anna Maria, the uniform is typically uniform replacement only. And so that's why the difference in that cost.
Commissioner Ball.
Neil, sorry, I'm trying to keep up with this, and
I
it's
know,
not
I'm
easy.
lost. Thank you.
I know, we're all looking at each other like, what?
We're getting charged
Um,
more.
We're not, I don't know how to word this. Are deputies going into the schools as the resource officers? Are you still moving forward with that? And if so, is that what some of these 11 positions are?
It is not.
Yes or no?
We are
Because
going-
I don't get
The
it.
answer is no. We are going to a guardian program right now.
Yeah.
Currently, there are officers, and those are employees of the school district who are being trained by the sheriff's office.
Okay.
We are planning on training between 40 and 60 of those individuals. The first class is currently in its second week. Those individuals will be considered guardians, and they will be placed at the elementary schools as they are trained and certified by us.
I'm sorry. Can you say that one more time about the elementary schools?
That's where they're going in. The guardianship was to cover every school as per the Marjorie Stoneman Act is that they wanted an officer or some type. They had many different options. They could get a security guard, they could get an SRO, they could get a guardian. They had a number of options.
Right.
The option chosen after discussions in May was to go with the guardian program. And so that entails us training the guardians, certifying that they are certified guardians at that point, and then they will go out to the schools and be the guardians in the schools. That takes 3.5 weeks roughly, and so we will have the first class of 20 completed in the first week of school, and then they will be pushed out to the school. The next week, we will do another 3.5 week class of another 20 until all of those schools have been filled. There were all the elementary schools as well as 4 high schools that are our responsibility in the county. Bradenton, Palmetto, and Holmes Beach may have done different arrangements. They may have done an SRO as opposed to the Guardian
They're using
program.
They're using
So,
a police officer, Holmes Beach is. One of their
does
police
that help explain that?
Yeah, it does, because it's a hot question, in the county. And if I may ask you another time, please, another question. The question that Carol had and Jen was involved, I don't quite understand that either. What's the difference in the monies that we're talking about, and where does it come from, and what is it exactly?
One of the things we noticed when we, one of the things we noticed when we went through, that there was some different charges for Anna Maria that they were paying for versus the school board and then versus us. And there was different calculations. What Neil's explaining is the reason he had variations in it, he's charging different amounts for different level years of service officers that they're putting in there. One of the things we did find is that, for example, the deputies that are in other places that you're getting reimbursed for, there's not a fully burdened rate for vehicles. You're still paying for all the vehicle maintenance once it gets into place. So Neil and I are meeting in January when you're setting the next year's budget for everybody else coming in to get all that lined up so that there's a fully burdened rate, so everybody's paying the same thing, that you're not carrying a load.
Yeah, and on that note, I think we did ask that the sheriff's department meet with our transit department to look at trying to merge together on that. Didn't we bring that up in our last,
Year,
was it last, nothing ever happened on that, is that?
do it.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, I'd like to know why that was. If you can get a chance, maybe Neil, you can get the sheriff or somebody to send me an email and let me know.
Okay, if you can help
Why?
clarify that. for
Okay.
me.
Commissioner Benak.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to clarify this on the school resource officers. We are continuing to have even funding
Right now, we have.
last year for
eight-
school resource officers.
Yes, we have
Million.
15 school resource officers and 3 supervisors, 18 total. The funding with our contract currently is 2.2 million, school board and the county paying 1.1 million each. And that does not include the vehicles and the fully burdened. That was taking the existing agreement that we had in place that didn't include supervisors. We added those to it and then split those costs 50-50.
Right. So we kept even funding. We are funding school resource officers. It was my understanding the school resource officers were in the high school and the middle school.
Right, but not
And
elementary.
guardians were going to go to elementary. Is that not correct?
They're, based on the act, it's elementary, but then they also they asked that any school that was over 1,000 needed an additional
Right.
officer in place. We don't have all of those officers, so there's a need of 4 additional officers in the high school. They could have been high school or middle school. Discussions with the school board indicated that no way would we put guardians in the middle school and that they needed to be in the high school.
High school. Okay. So those additional protection, whatever the safety that the state law required is going to be fulfilled by guardians in the high school, that additional standard.
Yes, so we'll have an SRO and a guardian in 4 of those high schools.
Okay. All right, because I do think it's important to clarify that we kept even funding. We didn't drop the funding. We kept even funding. So the additional unfunded at this point, number of officer requests was 11.
Yeah, that's the reduction that we went down after we had the discussion that Commissioner Johnson said the whole $4 million was flagged. We came back, discussed, the sheriff and I, we discussed what is our absolute needs are. That's when we turned the letter in for this reduced amount.
Okay. So we funded how many additional additional officers? I gotta get that.
12 total, 2 of which Anna Maria is fully paying for.
Okay.
Or
So we did put
Primarily.
12 new officers on the street.
Right.
And where will those be assigned? I mean, how many are road?
East?
Well, I mean, road or corrections?
those are road deputies. That's not addressing our corrections needs.
Corrections needs.
Ken?
Okay.
Yes.
There was a proposal before about talking about perhaps having a funding amount that would go to the sheriff. And the sheriff, because the point that was brought up is constitutionals have their own budgets.
Never see it.
We don't see the full budget. We see a budget request, we see a summarized budget, but we don't see your budget. We aren't the ones approving constitutional budgets in detail like we do these. So there was a discussion about setting an amount and saying, look, rather than us saying, you know, you need these many more deputies, or you need this many more officers at the jail, correction officers, that if we could have something tied to population increase, a funding amount, that it might take away some of this
Thanks.
angst of having this discussion. I don't know if you've had any discussions. Didn't that get brought up?
It got brought up.
Steve Johnson brought it
Yeah,
up.
I thought so.
Yeah, well, and I think, if I can just interject, what Neil's saying is, he came back, and just said, the lump sum that we're looking for over and above what we've already agreed to is $1,250,000 and change, plus the 300,000 one-time charge.
But impact fees paid.
And but he's gone a step further and said, here's where we're gonna spend it. But this is really the number, the lump sum number that we need to do what we're trying to get accomplished in the county, which was down from the 4 million, I think that was the
Correct.
original request. So they've come significantly down from what we saw the first time and said, hey, here's what we can, this is the minimum that we think we can
They
operate.
didn't come down.
No,
We
but
already funded.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand what you're the presentation that you just made to us, saying we need these additional that were not funded. That was the point of your presentation right now today. We need these additional resources that you have not funded in your budget at that time. Was that not the
That
purpose?
is what we're saying, is this
Yeah.
1.6 million is part of what we feel we
originally
absolutely
asked-
need.
That's what we're deciding right now.
Right. And I appreciate that so much. I mean, absolutely, this county is growing. All you have to do is read the paper. Somebody was telling me they don't really read the paper anymore because they get all the news. But you know what? The crime stuff is covered in the paper. You read about
Our trend is
the
up this
crime
year.
stuff that's going on. It's really, I mean, those
We've
the
had
folks they
massive
just
amounts
busted
of-
with drugs and what they had in their car, loaded guns. It's
Yes,
just-
so a lot of
crazy stuff.
unlocked vehicles out there, and people are taking every opportunity to go through those.
Okay, Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Neil. Again, as usual, I'm struggling with the process here, because, to me, we're talking about these flagged items, and then we're trying to prioritize them with the Guardian program, and then with the Sheriff's Department. So
The pooper scooper.
let's just, to just keep digging down this rabbit hole we're in. Let's just say the revenue comes back and it's only 800,000 more. So now what do we do? Who gets the priority? We gonna have to cut Neil, we gonna give the Guardians less money? I mean, I think this
any
discussion is a little premature until we have, and I think Betsy's position of, let's get the budget done. We can always do amendments to it. We see that all the time when we will actually know how much money we have to work with, because if I heard Jan right, or Ed, we're gonna adopt this budget, and we still won't have the final number yet from Charlie, type of thing. So really, we're kind of, we're here today really just to establish the millage rate, to me, and the issue is, do we want to raise it, as Robin is suggesting, or do we want to keep it where it is, and then see where the chips fall when Charlie comes with the final number? And I think we just need to move on and, get to setting the millage rate as to whatever we want it to be, and, have a good day.
Okay, Commissioner Whitmore is on the board next. You have a question for Neil?
Yeah.
Because we're still on public comment. Okay,
Yeah.
Commissioner Whitmore.
Okay, Neil, from the beginning, I remember when the stuff with the schools happened, you came in, we needed an additional 60, correct? And that's what you had originally asked, so
Yeah,
we
we
could fund
originally-
the schools.
Yeah, we originally asked for 60-some positions.
okay.
And we took the SROs completely off
I know.
that list.
Okay, so then it went down to, after we all decided that the schools were gonna do their thing, then it came down to, I figured approximately 30. Then we funded 12. You wanted approximately, because half of that was supposed to go to the schools. You wanted 12, and you got those out of the budget, so that meant there was 18 left. So you and the sheriff got together, and now we're down to 11, so you cut 7 positions, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I remember my numbers. Okay, now, here's my deal. I agree with Steve. We can always amend the budget. My thing is exactly what sets priority. Okay, Steve's talked twice now, and he's talked about the sheriff, the guardian. Nobody mentioned what I flagged and got approved. Because it is a position that's not public safety, and it's not in the court system, that's not funded. So that bothers me. I mean, but these flagged items were what we were supposed to fight about today. Unfortunately, we have set a precedent, and now we're here doing stuff that we've never done before, putting items that were never on the agenda before, because we did. And I'm okay with that because I'll try to do whatever I can do. So I agree, the processes are really kind of screwy. But,
Has been.
yeah, it totally is. I mean, I agree. If you get 800,000 and it's not up a million, then in all fairness to all of us, we will fund what positions we can and any of the other positions too. I mean, it's, so, you're gonna have to live within our means, and you are too, and you know that. So I have no problems of looking at what we have at the end and seeing what we can fund. But it is gonna be a recurring expense. All these positions that we've asked for are reoccurring, and we gotta think about that for the future. So that's the only thing I have to say, but, yeah, so really, you cut 7 positions since the last time you were here, approximately.
I'm not exactly sure exactly
yes.
how many roughly that we had initially. It's probably on
They
one of your
requested-
summary sheets.
They requested 66.
Yes.
Oh, 66.
66. We funded 12. And they're asking at this time for 11 more, right?
Yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sabatino, you have a question specifically for Neil?
Yes, how many new schools are coming on board next year?
3.
I believe 3.
So you'll need more officers for those schools?
In terms of guardians or in terms of SROs?
Don't pay
Just
for
depends
those.
on what, you have a high school, so you need an SRO, and,
Again, those will be decisions probably that will be discussed with the school board as to what they also desire.
I'm just saying that there's gonna be more need, thank you.
Okay, we have we're still open for public comment. Anyone else wish to speak only on this one flagged item? See no one come forward, we'll close public comment. We had a motion made, I believe, by, you have on the question?
Yeah, I just want to clarify, the funding for the school guardians is being funded by the school board,
Right.
so. And the state.
Only for a
Well,
few
Thank you for
years.
including the state.
That's
People
not
tend
a,
to forget that.
but that's not a permanent run, right, guys? I mean,
Right,
that-
well, that was the big point all along, was how much yes, correct?
Right, 1
Absolutely,
year.
Carol's correct, it was only 1 year. It
Right.
was a new requirement, it had funding from the state. When they came to us, they wanted more funding from the county because it wasn't gonna be enough to pay for school resource officers. We said, the majority said, no, we're not going to fund it. It was a mandate passed by the state. State provided funding. State should provide enough funding to do it. And the school board went back and figured out how to do it. I honestly don't know. All I know is that we have not put money in our budget for additional beyond what we had in the budget for the resource officers. So I think, and I only bring this up because Commissioner DeSabatino was asking, well, more schools. Obviously, next year, they got to have it covered. Whatever schools come online next year, they got to have it covered at this time. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we're back in this same situation next year with some request, especially who knows what the state will do. But it was their rule. They should have funded it, in my opinion.
All right, we have a motion, I believe, made by Commissioner DeSabatino and seconded by Commissioner Ball to prioritize the approximately $1.6 million if we have the money in the budget. Is that correct? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay? Nay.
How many? Raise your hand.
All right, all those opposed,
I'd
raise your
rather
hand.
amend the budget.
Yeah, okay.
All
So,
those
okay, so,
opposed?
All right, all those opposed, raise your hand.
Yeah, I
So
would
it was-
rather amend the budget.
It was 4-2.
No,
Not to
what a
pass.
shock.
Wow, so you're gonna have
So we're gonna be
animals.
disrespectful.
That's
It wasn't.
crazy.
It was a
No, not
Tuesday.
you, I'm just,
No, it's just to
Not me.
give you an option.
Robin, we said we
I'm
would
done.
amend the
Hey,
budget.
I'm done.
Let's get on through this. Commissioner Benak.
Yeah, I get to talk to my vote. I mean, my vote was, obviously, the sheriff's department is important. But we're talking about if we have an additional $1.8 million. We have an additional $1.8 million. I have no doubt that the sheriff is very important. I just voted against it because I don't believe we're going to have an additional 1.8 million come up. If we do, then I agree that we haven't done our budget properly. If we really got an additional 1.8 million bucks out there somewhere, but today was to say what is realistically and what we could prioritize. That's why the Guardian program at 41,000, that's what it says in my book. I don't think I read the email. Something changed there.
57
That's why I thought that
57,000.
might be something that might in fact be available between the 8.1 and the 9%. So I want to clarify, I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that the sheriff is not important, but I think your motion to come up with $1.8 million out of nowhere was not realistic. That's why I voted against it.
All right, we're now going to open up
I
our
got-
Commissioner Whitmore.
And I agree with what Steve has said, and Betsy, I have no problems amending the budget once we see the numbers are, but I can't make a commitment until I see what the numbers are, and then we'll amend the budget. It's not like this is a done deal.
Let's open this up for public comment for any item in the budget. Anyone that wishes to speak from the public, come forward and state your name. You have 3 minutes. General
Yeah,
comments now.
general.
Yes, sir.
Ah,
I can see where you're confused, so yes, sir.
Mike Meehan, Manatee County citizen. I had a letter to the editor in the Herald Tribune on Saturday. Maybe some of you read it. Yeah, thank you. Trying to clarify the issue of what's an unrestricted asset, what's a restricted asset. I think my little letter to the editor pretty well explains that. The general fund at the end of fiscal year 17 had $99 million. In the business side, I think that balance was $247 million. That's what I consider to be unrestricted assets. Cash, not dedicated to any particular purpose. So if you're trying to figure out your 20% rule, you could look at the governmental budget of $431 million from fiscal year 17, multiply that by 20%. That's $80 million, which can then be compared against a general fund balance of $98 million. And you can see you got about a $20 million amount of money above the 20% requirement that you're imposing. I should also point out that this 20% is strictly a county-imposed guideline, so you can change that guideline. You can raise it, you can lower it. If the money is just sitting there and growing and not being used, maybe you ought to think about lowering that figure. Right now, the general fund's at $136.6 million, so it's gone up $37 million just in this fiscal year to date alone. The unrestricted cash on the business side, which is also called proprietary, has gone from 247 to 274. So you've got over $400 million of unrestricted cash assets. So if you're worried about funding the sheriff's department or the person working at the animal shelter, why can't you just spend some of that money? Why can't you just spend some of that money? Addressing the issue of the millage cut, or the millage, I'm going to talk about cutting the millage. And my proposition, I think, was a very simple one, which I circulated to you as an email on Friday, which is that if you did a 5% millage cut, you would reduce your revenues by $11.6 million. But you've got $3 billion of assessed value coming on stream for fiscal year 19. That's going to give you an additional $18.3 million. So the net effect on the budget, cutting the millage 5%, but then benefiting from the increase in assessed value was 6.7. So the concept of cutting the millage is revenue positive by $6.7 million. Second item, consider billing a holiday for the month of December for the citizens. That would cost you $10.7 million, but if you're keeping the millage the same, you're going to raise $19.3 million. So that is revenue positive. That's 8.6. So these ideas are not going to reduce the total amount of revenue that the county is taking in, especially when considered in light of the $400 million that you've got sitting in unrestricted cash.
Thank you, sir.
thanks, Mike.
Well thought out. I did read your email. was well thought
Okay.
out. Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate you doing the work.
3 minutes is not enough time.
Yeah, yes, sir, it's not. Anyone else from the public wish to speak? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. Commissioner Benak.
Yeah. Jan, one more time, perhaps you could listen to, because when you start throwing these numbers around, I would like to see it in writing. Perhaps you could listen to the comments and provide a response so that we understand. Again, I appreciate looking at these fund balances, and we have the two different sources. We have our budget, we have the popular report, where Mr. Meehan has taken his information, that is the adopted popular report, and the difference in time, the different in the numbers, and what he just said about what's available to us. We're getting different information from the property appraiser, what's going to be available to us than what we're even working with. So we've got three different opinions at this point, and it makes it very difficult for us to make decisions.
We will provide a written report to you and to the public about the information that has been presented here. It's a bit disingenuous to represent that you have that kind of money and leaving it in the bank. We will show you and prove to you that our money in this budget is tied to the audited financial reports of the county and how you have limited resources available that we have described over the months in this budget. But I think that that disingenuous information provided by Mr. Meehan is just wrong. We will show you the true analysis of how you have to go through this budget. And if you were to exercise what he would recommend, your credit rating would go through the floor.
Commissioner Whitmore.
And Mike, thank you, because I know we've all read it, and we know you're doing a lot of work on this, but if you look at what happened today, 11, 12, 13 positions didn't get approved today. 11th sheriff, 2 with the dispatch. 2 positions maybe will get approved when the numbers come back. These are recurring positions, and you just have to be careful because in 10 years, 20 years from now, these same people will be working here, hopefully. And so you've got to look at what the future may hold, and maybe that's why Charlie's not giving us he's being conservative on the revenues that we're going to be getting in. We don't know that yet, and we've got to look on what's going to happen in the next 5, 10 years, how much revenues we're going to get, and how much are we going to be able to keep the departments. The county got creative with the building department, and they started where they're almost like their own enterprise fund. Everything in there is supported by the revenues they receive, most everything. And there's been no positions added, only if it comes out of there and they have a revenue to pay for it. So, I appreciate it, but it's really tight. We literally got, since 9 o'clock this morning, we've gotten 2 positions to consider. And like Steve and everybody else says, I have no problems looking at the budget after the numbers come out to see if we could add some other positions, maybe not as much as everybody wants, but add some more positions. So appreciate all the homework you're doing. And I know you keep going with this report from the clerk's office. And yet we've submitted one, and it seems like you're not looking at that, or you choose to look at the numbers that were presented by the clerk. And I think maybe if you sit down with Jan, we're not hiding anything. We will get you all the information you have to prove to you why we're doing what we're doing. And I think Ed's asked Jan to meet with you. So thank you for staying involved.
Commissioner DeSabatino.
I just have some questions right after this discussion regarding commissioner comment.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board on the trim? We have to vote on a trim rate.
It says it, but it doesn't
We
give
have
you.
provided you with a draft of a motion.
I would, the action requested is, if I may, authorize the county administrator to take all action necessary to certify millage rates approved herewith to the property appraiser. I think,
Jan will read those off if you would like.
please, yeah, clarify that because it's a little vague.
Spelled out better.
For the countywide operating millage, it will be 6.4326. Your voted GO bond issue ceases to exist. That is gone to 0. Your unincorporated MSTU is at .6109 within this budget, and your Palm Air MSTU is at .2546, remaining flat from the previous year.
Everything's flat.
Yes.
Everything's
the
flat.
overall
There was a
flat.
little bit of change, I believe, in the debt that
Yes,
did
'cause
move
it-
around a little bit, but the bottom line total millage rate remains the same.
Yes, ma'am.
It is not the rollback rate in all, you know, disclosure.
read
We
that
are
if you
not
like.
doing the rollback rate.
Right.
And so I am going ahead and making the motion to set the millage at the proposed total of, that's shown on the millage rate proposed slide.
Thank you, ma'am.
Very official.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the motion? No one come forward, we will, okay. State your name, you have 3 minutes.
Mike Meehan, citizen.
That was
I'm already cooked. Okay. The numbers that I cited in my previous commentary on this were from the CAFR report, which is a little more detailed than the popular report. So these are not disingenuous numbers, Mr. Hunziker. They are actual, real live numbers compiled by the clerk. And one number says current assets and the other number says restricted assets. And they're two distinct numbers and they're for both governmental and business. So I didn't make these numbers up out of thin air.
I'm not questioning the numbers, I'm kept questioning
Unlike
your
that's what
conclusions.
you were saying.
Mr. Meehan has the floor
Thank you.
for another 2 minutes and 20 seconds.
Just one other thought, the extra money that's going to be earned on the general fund, it's at 136 million. The interest rate on that is going to be about 2% for the upcoming year. I think we owe a duty to the social service agencies in Manatee County to take that interest, that extra interest, which will be over $1 million, maybe $1.25 million, and put that toward the budget for social service. Right now, the non-mandated social service spending in the county is about $1.8 million. So if you added $1 million to their budgets, it would make a substantial difference to them. And it might be able to even fund some of the ideas that perhaps Betsy was alluding to earlier in the conversation this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Seeing no one come forward, we'll close public comment. We had a motion made by Commissioner Benak, seconded by Commissioner Johnson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
Nay.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes 5-1. Math.
Ed, did you want to respond?
All right. Would you wish to respond?
Yes, I wasn't questioning the numbers, I know those are in that report. It's the conclusions of what you might be doing with that data and representing that there is more revenue, more funding available than we portrayed in the budget presented to you.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner DeSabatino.
This is a separate issue, just to bring up, hopefully by Thursday for our land use meeting, there will be public coming regarding that P25 radio tower. I just want to inform staff to hopefully be prepared for some folks coming. I don't know how many. Hopefully we'll have a report from the meeting that took place. I really appreciate staff spending 2.5 hours last week with us. And if they have any options that this board will consider, because the citizens are very, very nervous and upset that they weren't included in the process, and they just want to be heard. Thank you.
Commissioner Ball.
Yeah, you know, interesting, I've been watching that. Robin, is that in your district?
Yes.
I thought it was, but I wasn't 100% sure. Yeah, I'm hoping that maybe we'll get a briefing on that, or maybe I need one or whatever before it comes up, because
Ma'am,
we-
it is not on this agenda, though.
No, but it will
No,
be on
but-
public comment
Oh,
on
I
Thursday.
didn't think
Public
it was on the
comment.
agenda. So it's just public comment.
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Commissioner
public
Ball.
comment. People will, that was my impression as well, that, you know, we will have people showing up for public comment on it. So I'm hoping that perhaps we can get briefings on it so we know kind of where the county is, because I haven't actually heard that yet, and it could be my fault that I wasn't here or something, but we do need to know where the county is coming from on that subject. Thank you.
Commissioner Benak.
Just back in the budget, just want to make sure, you know, that we've had a lot of information go back and forth, and what is the process? We have another, can you just basically reiterate what our next steps are and when, so that we can continue this discussion? As we know, we had to set the trim rate, we had to do that. My understanding is we set the maximum, we could always reduce it, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And so if we could just say what the next steps are.
The next steps are, on the 14th, you'll be reviewing the utilities budget. Both the operating and capital side of the utility system is separate and distinct budget, but when you adopt the final budget in September and the 2 required public hearings that have been published, you will adopt the entire budget, including the ports as a dependent district, will be added to the numbers you've seen to date.
Okay, and those dates are set?
Yes, they have been set and they're published.
Okay.
Commissioner DeSabatino.
Just to go back to that item, just in case the public doesn't understand what I'm talking about, it's the 185-foot tower right off Prospect, just north of Talabast.
Any other comments before we adjourn? Adjourn.